Today's question is interesting. Going into Oscar season, should there even be a Best Director category? Check it out.
Hey guys, it's Sarah. Okay, I have to be honest. Doesn't it make sense for the Best Director nomination to be included with Best Picture and completely just scrap Best Director? Because I feel like a director has just as much to do, if not more to do, with the final film than even the producers, and I feel like they should share the award. One, it cuts out all of the controversy that often comes around with why wasn't X director nominated. And when you look in the past, the sound nominations were combined, art direction was combined with production design. To me, it might seem weird to remove an award from a director, but I think it makes sense. Would love to hear your opinion. Thanks.
No, listen. At first, you hear the question, should they get rid of the Best Director award? And the first reaction is that's a ridiculous thing because the director is like probably the most important individual involved with the production of the movie. But when you put it in the context of, listen, we always talk about I think we just said on yesterday's show, there is no one person who's more responsible for the final outcome of the movie than the director, right? And if that's the case, why not just kind of wrap that in with Best Movie? And I mean, listen, I've asked out loud on this show before, how on earth does a movie win Best Picture at the Academy Awards and the director, I can get being nominated for Best Picture and the director not getting a nomination, but how does a movie like Argo win Best Picture at the Academy Awards and the director, Ben Affleck at this point, was not nominated for Best Director? When, by the way, side note, Ben Affleck had won every other Best Director award that award season, including the DGA. The Directors Guild of America said, you're the best director this year. And anyway, that's a side point here. But as you guys know I like to do, let me make a sports analogy. It's kind of equivalent in a way, different, but in a way, follow me here, of Coach of the Year in a sports league. Like if a team wins the championship, didn't that coach do the best job that year? Shouldn't the coach just automatically be Coach of the Year if their team won the championship? Well, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. What was the coach working with? You know, did the coach have an all-star team of Hall of Fame players, or did the coach have a mixed bag of some rookies, some people coming off injury, maybe they had a bad year the year before? Hey, maybe they didn't win the championship, but my God, what that coach was able to do with that team was remarkable. I think the Directors Guild of America and a lot of the Academy's directors branch is made up of members of the DGA. We'll often look when talking about Best Director as, listen, maybe there's a movie that wins Best Picture because there's a million different elements that go into it. And maybe there was a director who did the absolute best job with what they had. There are some movies we look at that feel like this movie was all performance or all script or all this. And there are some movies we look at and say that was all direction. And so while I think it makes sense to ask the question, hey, should we just roll in Best Director with Best Motion Picture? And while absolutely the director is the most important person on that set, I would still say because there are so many moving pieces, because there are so many elements that go in to make the totality of what a film ultimately is, I think it still does make sense to have a separate, real solid sense to still have a separate award for Best Director. By the way, Sarah brought up the comparison to producer. The thing about the producer, the real producer, not the 45 other people who have co-producer, this producer, that producer, who maybe sat in on a meeting or two, but the real producer of a movie. By the way, you want to know what a real producer does? Watch The Offer on Paramount Plus. You want to see what a producer does? Go watch that. But the true producer of a film, the one who actually gets the idea for the movie, gets the script together, like commissions, picks out who's going to be whatever. Then they choose the director who's got the right vision, all that kind of stuff. And then they make sure the director's got everything they got. It's really their movie. So that's why traditionally the producers accept. That's why there's not a Best Producer Oscar at the Academy Awards, because the producer does receive. When they announce Best Picture, it's the producer goes up and takes it. Sometimes the director comes up too. Sometimes the director's a producer as well. So, yeah, I think it's a valid question, but that's why I think, no, Best Director needs to stay its own thing because, guys, we want to thank a sponsor of this video, Mint Mobile. If saving more and spending less is one of your top goals for 2023, why are you still paying insane amounts of money every month for your phone bill? Switching to Mint Mobile is the easiest way to save money this year. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order from home and save a ton, with phone plans starting at just $15 a month. Guys, I have told you before that when I was on one of the major phone carriers, I was spending literally 3 times as much every month, and switching to Mint Mobile couldn't have been easier. So for people just looking to save some extra money this year, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and switch easily in just minutes with eSIM. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. Rob, we've seen many years at the Academy Awards where Best Director is not necessarily the director of the Best Picture. You have been a producer. You have been a director. You have been an editor and worked on other things in films before. How would you address Sarah's question about, is there merit to just doing away with Best Director and lumping it in with Best Picture?
Well, I think it's a good question, but there are, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. David Fincher's movie Seven. That was his second movie that he directed after Alien 3, which is pretty much a debacle. Seven is a brilliantly directed film. Every inch, or every shot in that film is meticulously crafted by Fincher and Darius Khondji. There's no way Seven was ever going to win Best Picture. The subject matter alone, I know Silence of the Lambs had already won, but with Silence of the Lambs, you had these two great performances where you could get away with having a serial killer movie that can win Best Picture. But Seven, a little bit more downbeat. That might have been, very well have been the best directed picture of the year, but there's just no way it has an opportunity to win Best Picture. Another example, Shawshank Redemption versus Forrest Gump. Shawshank Redemption, I just watched it over the weekend, showed it to some people that hadn't seen before. Brilliantly directed film. Every shot, Roger Deakins, and then, of course, Frank Darabont, who wrote and directed that movie. Every inch of that movie is perfection. A movie set in a prison, is that ever going to beat Forrest Gump at Best Picture? Which one was better directed? I don't know. Someone's got to win. But in terms of her specific question of asking about a producer, like you said, a producer's job is very different. A producer, for instance, might have acquired a book 20 years ago that he has spent 20 years, or she has spent, or they have spent 20 years trying to get made. Developed it through multiple iterations of the script. Multiple directors have come and gone. Stars have come and gone. Whenever anyone else would have abandoned that project, suddenly it gets made and it wins Best Picture. That job of that producer is very different than the director. And the director was hired, comes on, works on it for a year, does a great job, knocks it out of the park, might even win Best Director. But he wasn't there for the 20 years it took to get that project to the screen. And I think that the project itself, a great producer who acquires that material, the producer has a vision that they wanted to make that movie. A lot of people might have poo-pooed it. There's a lot of movies that people, how many times was that project turned down at studios? It's not a great example, but Cry Macho, the Clint Eastwood movie.
Clint Eastwood one.
That script was written 40 years before it got made. Now, David Zaslav would tell you, and it shouldn't have been made because of the amount of money. But still, for somebody to carry a torch for that, for Clint Eastwood to actually get that movie made, maybe it wasn't the time to make it. And if you looked at box office, David Zaslav would say they should have never made it. But it did get made because somebody carried a torch for that project. And I think that's worthy of song and celebration as well.
Let me ask you this. I mentioned The Offer.
Right.
Another one I think about is Wag the Dog.
Yeah, and what just happened?
I was going to ask, what might be a good movie or two for people to go if they want to get an idea about what the producer does? What's another movie or two that people might check out?
I think that the movies like The Big Picture with Kevin Bacon is a good one. What Just Happened with Robert De Niro that Barry Levinson directed is great. It doesn't really deal with it from the studio perspective, the player, Tim Robbins, the player that Robert Altman directed. There's a lot of great, even if you want to look at a movie I love about movie making, this Richard Rush's The Stunt Man with Peter O'Toole as a maniacal director I love movies about making movies. And then there's of course Swimming with Sharks, Kevin Spacey being a crazy studio executive as well. But it's and also, oh God, there's the low budget Steve Buscemi's in it about
Armageddon?
no, it's about making movies.
Well, I'll let you think about that a little bit. Chris, you hear about this. I mean, look, we all say that the most important person, like once this movie starts shooting, is the director. Is there a case to be made for abolishing the best director category and just kind of lumping that in with best picture with the producers?
I mean, I'm sure there's a case to be made, because the thing that I keep thinking about and coming back to is when Argo won best picture and all these other awards, and Ben Affleck was snubbed for director, right? And that was one of those things where it was, well, this makes no sense, because if it makes best picture, why wouldn't it get the best director? And that
didn't even get nominated for best director.
Yeah. And that disconnect, I think, is part of why we all assume they're one and the same, right? That doesn't make sense. Ben Affleck even was quoted on Howard Stern saying, I can do the math on this. I can figure out who the asshole in the room is if I'm the one who didn't get anything. But, so I think there is a case to be made of, well, isn't it all the same thing? But, as Rob was saying, a lot of these folks do different things, and they have different objectives in the end here. While a director is your captain and in making sure things go smoothly, so much is placed on performance. You have other people too who you delegate work to, who you trust. Your cinematographer has so much, say in what happens. Your sound mixers have so much say in what happens and how things are executed. You're ultimately overseeing everything, but production producers, all these other folks come into play as well.
If memory serves, I don't think Steven Spielberg was nominated for Best Director of Jaws. But
I don't remember.
That Jaws was nominated for Best Picture. I mean, that's another instance where you're like, the actor Joe Spinell said, what, is somebody's mother direct that or what?
I know, but I hear that a lot, especially today. Like today, it's very, very, very different, because like today, like people say, oh, that movie got nominated for Best Picture, but what did it direct itself? Today we have 10 movies nominated for Best Picture.
Right. But
only 5 like today. But back then when it was the same number.
I think that it also speaks to bias. In the case of Spielberg, it was his second theatrical feature. You can include Duel because that was released foreign, but he had done Sugarland Express. Jaws was a movie that was troubled. He was a kid. And then whereas Ben Affleck was an actor, and I think the older members of the Academy, there's definitely a bias against directors.
But here's the part I'll never get. Because as we know, it is the director's branch
I know
that puts up the nominations. Mm-hmm. And who are members of the director's branch? Members of the DGA. And the DGA had just not only nominated Ben Affleck, but gave him Best Director of the Year at the DGAs.
Yeah.
And yet that same group of people didn't nominate him at the Oscars.
But there's a lot of directors that are no longer in the DGA that are in the Academy.
But you'd think there would have been enough votes there to at least get him on the nomination thing. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this question? Do you think maybe there's a case to be made that maybe the Best Director category at the Oscars could be done away with and just lump it in with Best Picture like the producers are? We don't think so around here, but maybe you do. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.